Hello everyone and welcome to this walkthrough on how to create an invoice. In this step-by-step animation, we'll be creating the invoice from scratch. If you want, you can follow along with this animation by downloading the resources just under this video, extracting the file, and using them when appropriate. The document is actually in two parts. In the first part, we'll be doing the print context. And in the second part, we'll be adding an email context and using the shared resources to simplify the creation of the email. No header rows, and just one body row, which basically will create a table that's split in two. Here we could use predefined styles that are provided with Designer, but because we're only using the table for formatting, we'll select the no style. That'll create a table that doesn't have any borders, doesn't have any spacing, it's just a formatting table. Now, it doesn't seem to appear, but it is there. We can show it by going into the Show Edges. So the Show Edges button simply highlights all of the elements on your page that are not paragraphs, so tables, divs, etc., just so you can see them and recognize them more easily. Now, there are a couple of different ways to add data inside of your template. The first thing that you can do is to actually drag any field from your data model directly onto your page. So let's say I want to put in the name. I just drag it in, and when we go in the preview mode, we can see that the data is replaced. This is our variable data document. However, because we have a full address block, we'll do it in a bit of a different way. So let me show you how we can create an address block, including all our line returns. So I'll just start by deleting the existing text script and the text on my page. And I'll put in a custom placeholder. A placeholder is basically text that will be replaced when a script runs, so when we're in preview mode or when we're generating output. It can be anything. The @ sign that you see here is just one way to put the placeholder. It's a default one, but you could use any character. Now that we have the placeholder, we need to add the script that will control it. So here we have the script editor. We can name the script, and then we define what it covers. So here we have a text placeholder, so we'll just type in that placeholder. And now we need to build the actual information that appears inside of that placeholder. So the first thing that we can do is to select the first field that appears. So here we're displaying the name. If I apply this and go in the preview mode, you can see that we have the same information as before. So we want to add new lines. What do? We simply add and then change the fields that we want. And as you can see on the page, it doesn't have any line returns automatically. So what do? We just add them. For each of these fields, you can add a static text prefix and suffix, so before and after each of those fields. And the other thing that you can do is format them. So for instance, if you wanted the name or the company to appear in uppercase, you can change the format here. Depending on the field type, you will have different formatting options. So in the text, you can do uppercase, lowercase. If you have a date, then you can select different date formats. We'll see that in a moment. And if you have currencies, then you can select a currency or a currency without the currency symbol. Okay, so to add a line return, because we're using HTML, all we need to do is to add a line return. And the address now contains a line return. Now, one thing to note here is if, for example, one of your records does not contain the address to, the whole line is ignored, including the prefix and the suffix. So this creates something like a skip empty line function where anything that is empty is ignored, even if you put the line return at the end. Now, on the right part of this table, we'll add another secondary table to, again, simplify the formatting, and then we'll add the information into it. So what we want to add here is, we'll start by the labels on the right to define what the information is. So I'll type that in. And on the right, we can simply drag in our data. I mentioned earlier that we could format dates, and this is where it becomes useful. The invoice date and due date are just a standard data field that has the date format in it. And we can format or change how it displays on the page simply by changing that script. So when we put a medium date and we apply, then we have the date. Now here's the thing, my system is actually in French, so the default system locale is in French, and this is how it displays by default. Let me change the other date, and then I'll show you how to change the locale. So the locale can be changed from the edit menu and then locale. So the default one is to use the system locale. So if your system is in English, it'll show dates and such in English. The other option is to hard code one. The second one is explicit locale. So you can basically tell this document, use the following locale. So when we click on English, the date changes directly on it to reflect an English date. So what do we want to add next? Well, we want to add the dynamic table that will have all of our item descriptions inside of a table that can change in height depending on the number of items that they have in it. Add a line return here and go into the dynamic table wizard. So in the first page, we can simply set the identifier for the table. And then if we have multiple detailed tables, we can choose the one that we want. case, we only have this one. Choose what we want to add in terms of columns. So do we want all of these, or do we want only part of them? This page, we can decide if we want subtotals to be calculated. The subtotals is basically a line that will appear at the end of any page indicating subtotal for a specific column, and at the beginning of the following page as a transport line to show the balance that was left from the previous page. For this to work, we need to choose which columns contain any numeric integer or currency that will be added up. And again, because we want to apply style manually to fit our own business, then we'll choose the no style and then apply this manually. Here we have the table that automatically, because we're in preview mode, displays all of the items for this specific client. If I change the record, number of line changes. Let's make this a bit prettier, first of all, by indicating what the data is at the bottom. So I'll just type in the subtotal. We'll add 2 lines to display our taxes and the total with taxes. Each of these lines that we add, we can make appear on the pages that we want by selecting the actual table row option on the right to say when you want to show these rows. Now, obviously for taxes and grand total, you want that to appear only at the end, so we'll just go ahead and select at the end of the table. And then we'll put in the labels and fill in the information. Now, if I remove the show edges and go in the preview mode, you can see that we are missing a lot of formatting. So let's just add that. From the design mode, we'll start by taking the header row when we select the cells, and then all we need to do is to right-click. First thing we'll do is go in to add a border. Now here you can select the border for any specific side, or you can select it for all the sides at the same time if you just want to have a box. And then in the background, here we want to use a custom color that fits our company. So we'll go and click on the add color, and we'll put the color manually. We'll call it the name of our company, click OK, and OK again. Now, of course, the text is now unreadable, so we'll just change that, and we'll put it white, and make it bold also. The next thing we want is to have a clear delimitation between all the lines, so we'll select the subtotal and then the detail line itself, and add a gray border to it. Now, because we added formatting to the detail line, which repeats itself, when we go in the preview, then the line actually appears on each of those lines, detail lines. And now to indicate the end of the detail lines, we'll just add the same big black border at the top of the subtotal at the bottom. And finally, at the bottom of the grand total, just to indicate the end of this whole table. Now that the borders are done, let's do a bit more formatting. So first thing is we want this to be aligned to the right. All the totals to be on the right, as well as the unit price. Now next, we want to add a bit of spacing because it's obvious that unit price and ordered are a bit too close together. So we'll just add that for the whole cells. And of course, the unit price needs a space. And I now realize that we forgot to add one information or one column in this, which is the product number, the product code. So we can just add this right here. And here we have our completed table. Actually, let's resize this a bit. And there we have it. Not quite right. Let's center this. Perfect. Now, of course, this invoice is a little bit bland because we don't have any logo or information on the company. In order for that to appear on all the pages, we'll use the master page feature. So let's go in the master page. And here, basically, you can see that the blue line indicates where your content is inside of the print section. However, all of the rest is free for you to put in any formatting that you want. So what we'll do is we'll add in the logo, and we'll add in a couple of information on the page itself. So let me get those resources. And what we'll do is we'll add the logo inside of a position box. And because the logo is fairly big, I'll just resize it so it fits within that box in terms of width. We'll also add another position box. And this one will contain our page numbering. Now this is easily done using the tools that we have. So page number of page count. And when we actually see this inside of the context, it shows us the appropriate page number. If we have an invoice that has 2 pages, we have them at the top. Let's go back in the master to add one last thing. Add a third position box. And this one will contain a barcode. Here we're adding a code 128 because many clients of this shop have indicated that they have a barcode reader and they want to be able to scan the invoice to say that they have received it. So we'll add the invoice number inside of the barcode. Just resize it properly. And there we have it. Now, obviously, we have a bit of alignment to do. So let me go do that right now. Thankfully, it's pretty easy when you can see the border. And the last thing we want to add to the print context of this invoice is a banner image at the bottom. I've already imported the image, so let me just add it. And again, just resize it to fit the width of the page. The feature that I want to show you here is the white space management. What this does basically is if you have something that you want to add on the page, only if there is space remaining, you can do it with white space. White space needs to be the top level element. What I mean by that is that it can't be the image itself. It has to be the paragraph that contains the image. And all we need to do is to click on white space element. Now this can work for any element that is at the top level. A paragraph, a table, a snippet, basically anything that you want. Now one thing with white space is that any contents that you have on your page will cause this to trigger or not. What I mean by this is that there is a paragraph between the paragraph image and the table. If we have this empty paragraph and the table is just long enough to arrive to the bottom of the first page or the second page, the paragraph will actually cause a new page to be created and the image to appear on that second page. We don't want that, so we delete the paragraph, but we still want to have some spacing between the image and the table. So we go and select the paragraph, and we can go change the spacing inside of its properties. So we can see here on the third page that the image does not appear because the table goes all the way to the bottom. But any invoice that is small enough to show the image will show it. Any invoice that takes 2 pages will show it after the second page unless there's not enough space. Now that we have the print invoice that we wanted, it's now time to create the email version of this invoice. Now, the advantage of having more than one context within the same document is that you can share resources. To do this, you need resources to share. Now, because I spent so much time formatting the table that I have here with the appropriate borders and the text and everything, what I'll do is I'll create a snippet using this table. Creating a snippet basically takes all of the contents on the page and copies it inside of a separate HTML file that contains what you put in. Now, in order to use that snippet, you need to add it on the page. It didn't actually replace it here, it simply copied it, so I can delete the table and re-add it from the snippet. And now let's create the context and use all of this. The email context contains the layout or predefined layouts that you can choose. The one that we'll choose does not have columns or sidebars on the left and right. So let's change this up a bit with the contents that we want. And then after our initial contents, because we have the snippet including the table, we can just drag it right into this. And then let's add the logo that also is shared. And we also want to add a small snippet at the bottom of the page that contains links to a couple of our social media. So the snippet is already prepared by the marketing department and was given to us. It contains the HTML, the CSS that applies the styles to it, as well as the 4 images for the actual social media logos. So let me grab that. And all we need to do is to add the snippet at the bottom of the page. You can see that it's not properly formatted because we haven't applied the actual CSS style sheet. To do that, we just need to drag the CSS directly onto the email context. And lastly, a couple of small details. I want to remove that text that was added at the top. And we also want to change the email to, so where the email will be sent, and the subject. This is done through the use of scripts. So if I start with the to script that is automatically added, I can select the appropriate field where the email is located. As for the subject, I'll just add that special script. And we'll put in just the invoice number. And that's it for the designer walkthrough and our email and print invoice. From here, you can simply click at the bottom to continue on to the walkthrough on the workflow module.